I'm going live and we are going to be talking. So welcome. So yeah, this is just a live Q&A. I'm just trying to get as many people as I can in here so we can have a good time and we can chat it up. I get that it takes a little bit of time to get some people in here. So I'm just going to let people kind of roll on in here and we can get some things going here. I'm really excited to teach y'all and try to build more Q&A stuff. I find that these Q&As can be very useful and very helpful for different people. So yeah, it should be a good time today. I'm really pumped trying to see what ends up happening. Welcome Justin. How's it going? Let's saying what's up, Zach. Yeah, how's it going, Justin? Like I'm here just trying to teach people about data engineering, data science, whatever y'all want to learn about. Like I'm here. I'm doing a boot camp starting May 6th. Should be a pretty good time. Getting more details on that for sure. Carly Taylor is definitely going to be teaching some stuff in that boot camp. So that should be a fun time. I'm really pumped to like get more people involved and get more people to like just be teaching and growing and building this thing up and seeing how far we can go with this stuff, But like I'm here just trying to teach people like anything. If you have any questions, go ahead and you can just drop them in the comments and I will answer them as much as I can. Right? Yeah. I'm just trying to like one of the things I've been trying to do is figure out how to like scale up, right, and get more people involved in this like journey that I've been on, because now it just feels like it's getting bigger and more awesome, and I think that that's really great. But like at the same time, I recognize that I can't do everything myself, and that I need to like get more people involved and like inspire more leaders. But yeah, welcome. If you are just joining, I'm doing a Q&A, so if you have any questions, you can just drop them in the chat, and I will get back to you as soon as I possibly can. So I'm really excited to see where this can go. Like I'm been building a lot. I have some ideas on like a free boot camp that I've been noodling on. I have some ideas on the paid boot camp, obviously, is going to be really big and awesome. Yeah. Okay. This is a great question. Did earning 500K at big tech make you happy? Was it worth the cost to you? Yeah. I mean, I think it was worth the cost. I mean, like, especially from the perspective of now, right? I mean, like at the time it was mixed. I felt like I had a somewhat unbalanced life at some moments, but like at the same time, like this definitely does depend on the person, right? Because I'm someone who doesn't have the greatest stress management skills. I think that that's probably like one of the things about making 500K that's like the worst if you don't have a lot of stress management skills. I think now, as I've like kind of gone on to bigger things and more stressful things, because like running a business and doing all the stuff that I do now is, I'd say, like about 20% more stressful than making 500K in big tech. But because of that, I've had to like learn new skills. And like I feel like nowadays I would have much better stress management in terms of like actually being able to knock a role like that out of the park. It's funny though, because nowadays it's like I'm like less interested in that than I am like now, because it's just like there's just so much more upside in building your own business and building your own stuff. So like I feel pretty powerful in that regard. But yeah, I think it was worth it overall. I definitely think it was worth it. I think I'd rather be doing that than like, having some job that has no upside and a manager who doesn't support my growth. Like I wouldn't say that it's the money that it was worth it. It was the learnings. It was like I learned so much working at Netflix, and I learned so much working at Facebook, and like all those companies that I worked at, I've been able to now, come back and teach y'all everything about it and stuff like that as well. So yeah, welcome everyone who's joining. I'm doing a live Q&A for about the next hour or so. So if you have any questions or thoughts or anything like that, I am here to help you guys understand whatever you want to learn or grow and build on all that kind of stuff. Like it should be a good time. I'm really excited to see where this kind of goes. Like there's so much to talk about here, right? In like the data engineering space. So like definitely, yeah. Thanks, Luke. Like I really appreciate you. Right. Oh, here's a good one. Hey, Andrew. Andrew says, I'm trying to build a sports scraping pipeline right now, and I have to manually run through this script right now. What are some tools that I could use to schedule this to run on its own? I'd probably pick like a Mage. Mage is probably a good one, or like Airflow or Astronomer. I currently use Astronomer at my company. Like that's like the kind of the base that I use to kind of do stuff with, because I just don't like DevOps stuff. But like you could do whatever you want there. Like you could also just use a basic cron script. For a lot of my very basic ETLs, that's what I do. I just use cron, and I use a thing called Heroku Scheduler. Heroku Scheduler and cron are both really freaking awesome. Oh, let's get one from here from Caesar. At what age did you start your data engineering journey, and any advice you would give yourself when you first started? So I wrote my first data pipeline when I was 19. So that was like 11 years ago now, I guess. So like I didn't really do big data stuff until I was 20 though. So like 1920 was when I really started. It's been like about 10, 11 years though since I like really jumped in. I think a couple things there about like what I would give myself to start is like understanding that like you don't have to push yourself so hard, that like you're going to grow at the pace that you're going to grow, and that like trying to make it faster and stressing yourself out is not really worth it. On the other side, it's like learning more about machine learning, learning more about that kind of stuff, I think is super important. Let's see here. What's this one? What's the smallest a data team can be for a company, say with about 200 employees and data still in the hundreds of gigabytes range? Size isn't what's important here. It's more about like variety, right? Because you know how there's like a couple different V's of big data, right? You have volume, variety, and velocity. And really it comes down to like variety is where how the data teams scale, right? Because if you look at like Netflix and Facebook, they have 10 to 100 times more data than Airbnb, but they do not have 10 to 100 times more data engineers, because of the fact that like it's not just a volume problem. There's a variety problem. There's a lot of other things you need to think about beyond just like how much gigabytes there is. But I would say if you have 200 employees, maybe like five is probably the right number, 5 to 10, but it honestly depends on like what your use case is. If you're a more data focused company, that probably goes to 20. But like generally speaking, the data teams are like between like 5 to 10% of the company. So that to give you kind of a perspective. See here. What is your opinion of things CI/CD in terms of quality? I love CI/CD, especially in terms of data pipelines, because data quality checks that you run, they catch bad data in production, but CI/CD is going to catch bad data before it enters production, which is a much, much better freaking way to go, right? Than doing it in production, because it's just a massive pain in the ass once it enters production. See here. Is data modeling like system design and backend engineering? No, it's not. It's just not. It's a completely different skill set. Like you're thinking of data architecture, not data modeling. Those are two separate things, and they both are very important. And yeah, like data modeling can be all sorts of things, right? You have like relational data modeling, which is going to be more like your third normal form kind of stuff that you kind of probably have already experienced in backend engineering, where you have like a lot of foreign keys and primary keys, and you try to normalize the data as much as you can. And then it goes all the way to being extremely denormalized. On the other end, you have things like one big table and Kimball and stuff like that. And that stuff is going to be the other side of the data modeling paradigm. Whereas like, generally speaking, you want to have data, the more normalized the data, the more like online it is, the more like server oriented and application oriented it is, because normalized data is going to be optimized for like throughput and latency, whereas denormalized data is all about like the entire data set and how you can manage the entire data set at once. Let's see here. Hey, Zach, thank you for doing this. How does one start with data engineering? Consider the person already knows SQL. Just write a pipeline, dude. Write some Python. You need to know Python for sure. Like Python would be great. Like learn Python and play around with a REST API and learn how to extract data from another system. Like maybe set up a Python script that loads data into BigQuery. That's probably a solid place to start, or Snowflake, right? All right, see here. Do we need expertise on data warehousing concepts in depth? Go. This is like I don't know like what this means as a valuable concept. Like obviously you need to know about data warehousing, otherwise you're not gonna freaking be the best data engineer that you could be. It's super important, but it's not like it. Like I don't understand what this question is asking. So let's see here. What courses in college do you think are the most useful for DE? SQL and databases, like, and data structures and algorithms. That's about it. Like in my experience, that's about it. Everything else was not that useful. I actually found Android development to be somewhat useful, because Android just went way deep into Java. And so, yeah. Okay, here's a good one. Hey, Zach, what do you think is the best alternatives to Redis? Because Redis gets expensive as size increases. Ahmed, I would need a lot more context GCP Bigtable. Like generally speaking, Redis, if you're using it as a queue or you're using it in that space, you're going to probably want to maybe move to Kafka or Rabbit or things like that. That's going to be the way to go. I'm generally not a big fan of Fivetran and Airbyte because I feel like if you adopt those technologies, like, and that's what you're focusing on in your job, like that kind of limits your abilities to grow technically. And I don't like that. And they were not used at my jobs. No, not at all. They were used 0%. They don't like, they write code at Netflix and they write code at Airbnb and they write code at Facebook and they hire people who know how to write code. They don't want to use no code solutions for that exact reason. Okay, let's say here. To get started, you say to load data into a data warehouse. What do you think about trying to build out a data lakehouse? Do it. That's just a lot more ambitious. But yeah, go ahead. Like for sure. That's a great idea. Tabular is a great choice there. If you've heard of tabular.io, it's going to be a great place to like build a lakehouse. Let's see here. How to decide between AWS and Azure to learn for data engineering? Just do AWS. And because there's a lot more jobs in AWS, there's like twice as many. Okay, let's see this one. I have already implemented an ETL, which would dump data into Google Cloud Storage and a table in BigQuery. Also scheduled it to run every day at a chosen time. What next step should I take from here? Do you have a viz? Do you have front end? Like, I don't know, like freaking, like if you've already done that stuff, like, is it interesting? Can you tell a story with it? Like, if you just moved bytes around, then that's probably a very boring freaking resume or portfolio project. But like, if you actually have impact from it, that's the way I would go. Let's see here. Can Mage leverage AKS for integration pipelines from on-prem to ADLS? No idea. That's a ChatGPT question. What about streaming pipeline with Kafka, Flink, and data engineering? Very important if you want to make a lot of money, but not that important for most data engineering roles. Only about 15% of data engineering roles even use streaming even a little bit. So 85% of roles do not need this. So keeping that in mind, like it all depends on where you want to go and where you want to grow. Like I have very little experience with Flink and Kafka, even though I have big tech experience. I have like 1 year of experience with Flink and probably like 2 to 3 years of experience with Kafka. So it's not that important, even if you want to make a lot of money. Like I made $600,000 a year at Airbnb and I never used Kafka and never used Flink. So it depends on what you're trying to do in your career, if you want to grow in that way or not. Let's see here. Do most companies need stuff like write Iceberg on S3 and build Lakehouse? I'm becoming to think something like write on some data warehouse like BigQuery or Snowflake is enough for 95% of companies. Like, yeah, probably. I mean, Snowflake and BigQuery, that's their whole point, right? Is they're like, we're trying to be the one-stop shop for all of your data. So like, yeah, 100%. There's not like, you don't need to have a super technical large scale thing for a lot of companies because they just actually don't have that much data. And so like the data engineers in that space they don't need it, right? Let's see here. How would you transition from old or low code technologies like SIS to Airflow and such? Like you probably want to find the most critical pipelines and try migrating those first. And then the leaf pipelines can happen later because once you have the critical pipelines over, that's going to be the hard work, right? Because those are going to be like the central pipelines, whereas the leaf pipelines are going to be a little bit easier to figure out because they will be probably a much smoother migration. So that'd be my perspective on that. Let's go back up here a little bit to Prajwal. To upskill my DE career, I want to focus more on real life project use cases and problems more than improving on coding skills as ChatGPT is already there. Yeah, I mean, please suggest resources for that. Like you should learn how to do that. Like part of it is not being handheld, right? Part of it is being able to figure out what projects to build on your own and making those decisions yourself, right? And not asking influencers to guide you, right? Because you should be able to do that on your own time and be able to figure out what the next thing to build is, right? And so like definitely learning about projects. Like for me, I worked on this Pokemon Pokedex thing for a while. And then I had this Magic the Gathering app that I worked on. And guess what? I didn't ask a single person like what I should do next on those things. I figured it out myself. And that process of figuring out how to do things yourself makes you a much better engineer. I promise. It's called being an autodidact. And if you can do an autodidact, that is going to be going to serve you much more than following some roadmap some influencer gave you to get prepared, right? Let's see here. Yeah, just letting everyone know who's in here. I am doing a Q&A. So if you have any questions, I'm answering them. See here. Oh, we got one here from Colin. Do you think trying to set up Airflow in production in a team with a few people, but a large variety of data sources worth it, especially if the team has to maintain the Airflow deployment? Just use a service. Just use Astronomer. Just like you can set up Airflow in 5 minutes. Like I literally have the same problem, right? I have my own Airflow cluster that I have that is all running in Astronomer. Managed services are the future. Don't freaking pull your hair out with freaking all that other shit, right? Don't do that. Like just freaking use a managed service and pay a little bit more money, right? Because it's worth it. Like, because unless you value engineering time at like very, very little, which is not the case because engineering time is very expensive. So like every time that you're in that like DevOps, freaking AWS console, freaking EC2 instance hell, like every hour you're in there, you're losing money when you could have just used Astronomer. And assuming that like you're spending at least 2 or 3 hours a week on that, which is probably a very optimistic estimate, then freaking like Astronomer already gets you back like after hour 3 of your engineer's time. So definitely check that out, right? So let's say here, Isaac, how can we decide whether to use Redshift or Athena for very large data sets? I don't know, man. Like freaking you decide on your own time. Like I would probably learn more about each of the technologies and learn which way to go, right? I don't really have that much experience with either of them. I'm not that impressed with Redshift, so I'd probably lean into Athena, but like that's my perspective, but that's not necessarily the right perspective, right? I'll answer this question, even though I don't like this question. What's your opinion about the impact of LLMs on data engineering? It's going to make data engineers more productive. It's going to make data engineers better. It's going to also make data engineers more critical because you got to think about it. LLMs, they're not magic, right? LLMs, they make predictions based off of data. That's literally what they do. And if you are making predictions based off of data, you need quality data. And this is something that is going to be a bigger and bigger field where you have these data engineers that work on training LLMs with higher quality data. Because the higher quality the data that goes into the LLM, the more it's right, the less hallucinations it has. There's a lot of things that can actually happen there. And I think that there's going to be a nice big branching field of data engineering that works on gathering that training data and making sure that it's good to go. Let's see here. What is, okay, let's try this one. Yeah, thank you, Gandalf. The channel has been keeping me inspired and motivated as I look for a new job. I'm glad to hear that. I'm trying my best to get people growing and building here, right? And I'd love it if y'all share my YouTube channel with your friends. I'm just definitely trying to grow. I want to get that silver plaque this year, so I'm definitely going to be investing quite a bit of time here as I grow more on YouTube. If you're on LinkedIn or Facebook right now, if you look up Data with Zach, that's going to be the channel that you're going to want to look at on YouTube to subscribe. Let's see here. I'm just waiting for some other questions that are going to be better because like these ones are not like, I don't have anyone here that I like feel like is great. Oh, this one's good. In your experience, what would you partition your favorite SCD on? Would you do anything about potential skew or accept as is? I mean, if you're doing a slowly changing dimension, it should definitely be partitioned on date. That's about it. Like, I mean, it's going to be date, and then you have like the dimensions that you're tracking over time. I would not really worry about skew. That's not as big of a problem as you think it is. Like, obviously, there are some dimensions that are like that, where you have a couple people who are like changing their name every day, and then almost everybody else changes their name almost never. So, like, 100%, you're right in the fact that like there are slowly changing dimensions out there that can skew. But there's nothing you can really do about that. That's just the natural form of the data, right? It's like, okay, that's what that person is doing. So we need to model it in the way that that makes sense. Like, I mean, in those cases, I would maybe like, if there's extreme outliers, you might need to like model those separately in a separate partition. At least back in the day, this is not as big of a problem as it used to be because Spark is much better at handling skew than it used to be. But back in the day, what you needed to do is the skewed records you need to put into a separate partition. I remember all these like tables that I had that had like a is skewed partition, which was just a Boolean of true and false, so that like you could process the skewed records separately so that it didn't out of memory. That was definitely something that I did. But Here's a good one. Do you think Polars and DecDB will make Spark and other distributed query engines obsolete? No. I mean, do I think that like it will make Spark less adopted? Probably, because like right now and for a long time, I definitely have felt like that there is like Spark is kind of overkill for a lot of data pipelines, especially like if you're under like 5 gigs. If you're under 5 gigs, like what the fuck are you using Spark for? Like that's not like what you should be using, right? You should be using something else, definitely. So let's see here. What stock should we be buying? That's not. I'm not a financial advisor, so I don't answer that question. Let's see here. When is it worth to implement Data Vault data modeling instead of Kimball? Like never. I don't know. Like I've never felt the need to use Data Vault. So I mean, some people they say that Data Vault is better if the requirements of your data pipeline are changing very rapidly, then that is going to be where Data Vault is going to shine above Kimball, because you don't have to backfill as much. You're not going to eat the painful backfill just pain that that you can get with a more of a standard Kimball model. That's going to be probably the main thing is like, so I would maybe suggest doing Data Vault if like when you're going through the process, you're like, this model is going to change a lot over the next year, then Data Vault's probably going to be the way to go, right? Do you know Streamlit? Yeah, Streamlit's cool. I think Streamlit is really awesome because it makes it very easy for data engineers to build stuff. I personally don't use Streamlit because I rather just do custom viz with JavaScript and just do it all myself and do it with like D3 and fancy shit, because I find that fancy vizzes with D3 are still just, they're more tasty and more delicious than Streamlit based vizzes are. Streamlit still is, you are still kind of in that, you're in a box a little bit in Streamlit. So like, I don't use it completely, but like I do firmly believe it's very good. It's like, it's in the middle there, right? Between like using Tableau. So you have Tableau on one end, which is like no coding at all. And then you have custom JavaScript, which is like a ridiculous amount of coding. And I like how Streamlit's in the middle, right? That's going to be the best way to go, right? Oh, this is a good one. Hey, high level, how do you organize your intermediate and MART models tables in your data warehouse? Like, what's your naming patterns and how do you group models into groups? So generally speaking, you have a couple different types of tables, right? So you're going to have fact tables that usually start with FCT. You have DIM tables, which are going to be like daily snapshots. Then you have SCD tables, which are slowly changing dimensions. And then you have aggregate tables, which are just aggregations on top of those tables. And so, those aggregate tables usually start with ag or end with ag. They usually start with ag just so that like it's very obvious. That's going to be the big way that you kind of, if you can do that right, where you have your facts, your DIMs, your SCDs, and your aggregates like named the right way, that you're like already doing a lot better than most companies are doing. So that would be the big thing. I guess there are other ones. You have intermediate tables, which are usually staging, and those usually start with STG, like staging STG. So that's going to be the other big one. So let's check this one. Can you touch about metadata management? If the need present itself, what would you go for? Let's say small to medium project, but we somehow need to track the provenance and the transformation of the raw data. Well, I mean, like, some of this comes back to, if it's a small project, like, okay, if what is there 5 tables involved? If it's a small project, then just you should be able to know everything about it, right? Like, it all depends on how big it is. Lineage only becomes a problem when the data warehouse gets very big, right? So generally speaking, metadata management, I'm all about Iceberg. Apache Iceberg is freaking really awesome, and I know that they're going to keep building on Iceberg. If you're looking for like a commercial solution for that, like Tabular is really great. Here's a good one. What's your opinion on current status of Scala? Is it declining in popularity? That's a great question. I think Scala is a mix, right? It's always been niche. It's always been like 20% of data engineering roles. And I don't think it's declining in popularity in some regards, because at Airbnb, they published like, if you want to have a solid gold pipeline, it needs to be in Scala. So there are some places that are really advocating for more Scala adoption, and then there are other places that are moving away from Scala and moving more into Python and other kind of places. So like generally speaking, for me, I freaking coded in Scala from 2018 to 2023. I did 5 years, and in those 5 years, I made $2 million working at Netflix and at Airbnb. And so like I'm grateful for Scala because I think it made me $2 million. So that's pretty cool. So it definitely has some places where it's going to be useful. I think the main thing is why people have this perception that Scala is on the decline is because Spark 3 really makes Scala not as necessary because Python and PySpark is about the same as Scala now. And so it's like, why learn Scala? And it's like freaking painful, right? If you like are trying to learn it, because it's a funky language. Scala is a really funky language. But like then other engineers are like, but in the data frame API, it's the same stuff, right? So, okay. I'm trying to find more if we can. Oh, we'll go with this one. Hey, Danilo, what are your thoughts on Microsoft Fabric? Have you had hands-on experience with it? No, I have not had hands-on experience with it. How does it perform compared to other data SaaS solutions? I don't know. Like, I mean, my perspective on Fabric is it's just going to be, you're going to get the same experience with Fabric that you do with Microsoft Outlook. And so if you love Outlook as your email provider, then go with Fabric and you're going to probably have a good time and you're going to have that. That's going to be the perspective that you're going to get. But, and I hate Outlook, by the way. So that's my perspective mostly with Fabric because it's the same. It's a Microsoft product. It's going to have that vibe to it. And I'm not as much about all-in-one platforms because it's just like the whole idea of like vendor lock-in. And it's like, okay, we're going to bet the entire farm on Fabric and then they're just going to raise prices 30% and there's nothing we can do about it because we're locked in and there's literally nothing we can do. So like, that's one of the reasons why I like the idea of kind of having betting on a kind of more or a heterogeneous kind of open source structure where like that's why Iceberg is great because it's like Iceberg you can put on GCP, you can put on Azure, you can put on AWS, and it's not that hard to move around if you need to. And so like that's pretty cool. So there's definitely like kind of a risk with betting the farm on Fabric, but like also you get that simplicity, right? So are microservices and design patterns important for data engineering? No, just no. There you go. What's your opinion between Huddy and Iceberg? Iceberg is better. I don't know, but that's like a very just like tech bro, not freaking like super freaking dive deep into the details there. Mostly, my perspective is Huddy's in third place, Iceberg's in first, Delta is in second, and Huddy's in third. That's my perspective on the three kind of open source file formats. But we'll see. I mean, Databricks is pushing Delta pretty hard. I just don't think Huddy, there's that much room for Huddy in this space because it's like, why use Huddy when there's Iceberg and Delta and they do exactly the same thing. They all do exactly the same thing. So like, and you might as well use the one that has more adoption, right? Okay, let's see here. This one's good. Data engineers working with Snowflake are never introduced to Spark pipeline. So is it better to have certifications in Snowflake or switch jobs for Spark? Switch jobs for Spark, I guess. I don't know, Yash. It really depends. It really depends on what your goal is. Like, I feel like if you're looking to make more money, you should probably learn Spark. I feel like Snowflake, you're gonna get kind of capped out at that like 150 or 125, 150K. And that's just going to be the kind of the upper end that you're going to be hitting. Like if you're more of like a software engineer, data engineer archetype, definitely don't just learn Snowflake. Spark is much better in that regard because of the fact that you can build on like a software engineering mindset and you can bring in unit tests, integration tests, all that kind of stuff. So like in that regard, like I think that Spark is going to challenge people more because it actually makes you think like a software engineer, whereas Snowflake is like, it makes you think like an analyst. And that's the whole purpose of those two platforms. That's why Databricks, in my perspective, is the better platform between Databricks and Snowflake is because of that fact. But like, obviously it depends on the company because for some companies, Snowflake is going to be way, way better because they don't need Spark. But like, this is not about like what's better for the company. It's about what's better to learn as a data engineer for your career prospects, right? Okay, let's see. Let's find some other kind of perspectives here of some interesting questions. Okay, how relevant is Cassandra right now? I'll answer that question. I never answer questions about certifications because I think that certification stuff that's for you to decide. It's not on me to tell you which certification is better. You should do your own research. But Cassandra is pretty relevant. I I did a lot of Cassandra on at Netflix when I was building out the graph database stuff, like because Cassandra, like there's this technology called Janus Graph that I worked with that was Elasticsearch and Cassandra together. It was like Elasticsearch for fast queries, and then Cassandra for like the longer term storage. It's pretty cool stuff. What's your opinion on data mesh? Hype. A lot of hype. Like, I don't know, like people, like so many people have like this beautiful opinion about it where they're like, if we just give the stakeholders the data, they can build the pipelines themselves. And it's like, no, they can't. Like, honestly, they can't. I've seen this fail at Netflix and at Airbnb. I've seen this like where people are like, data mesh is the way to go. And it's like, wow, there's actually like more complications to building pipelines and building stuff than we initially thought. I mean, with that being said, there are companies out there that have successfully implemented data mesh, like Uber is a great example. Uber is just so crazy because they've implemented two things. They have two things going for them that are like really, really like innovative, right? Because they successfully implemented Kappa architecture, which is like a streaming first architecture, which is like, and they have that for like a large chunk of their warehouse. And then they also have data mesh working for a lot of their customer service reps. So like the fact that they were able to actually implement both of those successfully when so many other companies failed just really shows how innovative like Uber is as a company. So yeah, so if you're just joining, I'm doing a Q&A. So if you have any questions, I'm down to answer whatever questions y'all have. I'm here for about another 30 minutes. So I'm excited to see where this can go. I wanted to say like, I am doing a boot camp on May 6th. It's going to be May 6th to June 14th. It's a pretty good time. If you use the code promotion15 is going to give you 15% off the boot camp if you want to. You got to use that by April 7th, though. So if you want to get that 15% off, definitely check it out. This is a great question. Mohammed says, do we need to invest more time on learning VectorDB? I mean, probably not. Like, I think that VectorDB is like, I don't know, man. Like, here's my perspective on it: is that like part of that is going to be more like data platform work. So like, unless you're a data engineer who's doing data platform work, then you might need to do VectorDB. But otherwise, you probably don't need to do VectorDB. But like, it can be very useful, especially if you're trying to be on the cutting edge of stuff, right? So that's going to be a powerful thing to learn. I think if you're trying to like build like RAG, and a lot of companies are trying to build a RAG right now. And if you're trying to build RAG, VectorDB can be very, very useful. But like, that's about it. Like beyond that, and there's not that many companies that need RAG, but the number of companies that freaking need data analytics and experimentation frameworks and stuff like that is every company, right? Okay, let's see here. I like this one. Where do you think DE space would move up in 10 years from now? Well, 10 years is very, very far from now. But my perspective on this is DE will become like kind of like the truth center of the company, right? Because you have a lot of the analytics and a lot of the other pieces of the puzzle that are going to be kind of moved away or taken over by LLMs, and some of data engineering is definitely going to be taken over by LLMs, like for sure. Especially like the simpler pipelines are definitely going to be taken over. But like my perspective in 10 years is that like data engineers will still be there. They're going to be really focused on quality and getting as much LLM stuff focused, right? Because my perspective on it is like, if you're a data engineer right now and your data is informing a lot of decisions, then that's when you make the most money. So like, for example, when I worked at Airbnb, my data informed the smart pricing algorithm, which a large chunk of Airbnb hosts don't set prices at all. They let the AI set prices. And so, and my data determined those prices for a large chunk of Airbnb listings. So like, if you are in that position where you have like millions of automated decisions that are happening because of the data that you produce, that is a very, very good position to be in as a data engineer, because that's when you're going to make the most money. It's when you're going to have the most impact, all that kind of stuff. So Brandon Powers, I love this one. Thoughts on TableFlow announcement from Kafka Summit to materialize Kafka topics as iceberg tables. We are literally going to be covering that in the bootcamp. That is one of the goals of my bootcamp this time around, is we're going to have Confluent APIs that then get materialized into iceberg tables, and then you can query those iceberg tables with Trino. So then you can actually like have a really awesome kind of schemified way of doing things. I think that that's a really powerful. I mean, I'm really, really bullish on this because then it just like it makes it so that like you like a lot of data engineers don't even want to touch Kafka, right? Because Kafka is like a fucking pain in the ass to deal with. So it's like if this just is like, hey, here's Kafka and here's my schema and here's my table, and then I can just be in batch and I don't have to worry about it. That is like really cool. I think that that's gonna like save a lot of pain and suffering and like that's one of my favorite things about Iceberg is the fact that you can append like that and you can just keep adding new data to the same partition. And that's like why Iceberg is just so vastly superior to Hive is because you can do stuff like this where you can just take the data in real time and move it over, right? Let's see here. How do you make joins in really, really big data, like really, really big? So if it's really, really big, you need like extremely big. You need to always have one side be small. So in that case, you need to use a thing called a broadcast join. Broadcast joins in Spark are going to be the way that you do a join, but that's only if like one side is small, like one side small, meaning like less than 10 gigabytes. And the other side can be as big as you want. But if it's like a little bit smaller, like in terms of like, say we're talking like, say we're talking like 10 to 50 terabytes. So if you're in the 10 to 50 terabytes and you're trying to optimize that join, then you're going to want to use bucketing. Bucketing is going to be the really solid way of going about it that I think would be really powerful. And bucketing, the problem of bucketing though is that you still have to shuffle and you still have to pay the cost once. But if you're doing multiple joins with the same table on that same join key, bucketing on that join key will make the join a lot more performant because then you don't have to shuffle. Let's see here. Oh, this is a good one. Can you provide a little bit more details on topics that will be touched at the bootcamp? So we have 2 weeks on data modeling, a lot of stuff on slowly changing dimensions, Kimball data modeling, one big table data modeling, complex data types, also fact data modeling, large volume fact data modeling. It's another section. Those 2 weeks are covered on in either track. If you're infrastructure or analytics, you can do either track and you can get that. You can also get for weeks 3 through 6. So weeks 3 through 6 are going to be like the single track, or you can do the combined track. So weeks 3 through 6 are going to be covering things like Spark and Flink and data maintenance and integrating integration tests on Spark pipelines. So a lot of like very Spark focused on the infrastructure side. If you were taking the analytics focused side, you're going to be covering more things around like DBT, also things like analytical patterns and experimentation and metrics and KPIs, and also visualization. So, or you can take the combined track and just learn all of it. Like it's a lot. It ends up being like 60, 70 hours of content that you can watch. And then there's bonus weeks. There's going to be some bonus time. Carly Taylor will be teaching some classes on communication skills and career development skills. And then like we're going to have, I'm going to be working with some machine learning people so that we can build RAG. We can actually build out some RAG and stuff like that as well. Do some cutting edge bonus week material as well. So that stuff should be pretty awesome. I'm pretty excited to see where a lot of that goes. I'm really excited. And if you want to get in on this bootcamp, if you use the promo code promotion15, promotion15 will get you 15% off, and it's a good deal. But you have to do that by April 7th. Let's see here. How to deal with GDPR for large tables. My company partitions everything by customer, which kills job performance in exchange for easy deletes. Is the alternative just a big ass Spark job? You partition on customer? That is disgusting. Like, could you do it a little bit differently? I think partitioning on customer is a terrible decision. Like, I think the better perspective there would be like, can you partition on like customer group? Is there like a lower cardinality field that you can partition on than customer ID? Like, you should never partition on customer ID. That's terrible. Like, that should be like not the way to go. Obviously, that makes it easy because you can just drop the partition. But like, if you're optimizing your data model for delete, like, that's just absurd, because like if you partition on customer ID and then the select is, you're going to have the too many small file problem, right? You're going to have like a lot of very small file problem, right? So after completing your bootcamp, would one be ready to apply straight to DE roles? I mean, there's been a lot of people in my bootcamp who have been ready. It honestly depends on where you're currently at. Like, if you have no experience at all, if you're someone who has no coding experience and you've never done a job before and anything like that, probably not. but we're going to try our best to get you mentors and grow and all that stuff, right? So let's go to this next one. Should a senior data engineer mention personal projects on the resume if they don't have real work experience of certain skills that the description is asking for? That's a good strategy for sure. Especially like, I mean, the one thing I would caution you about there is that personal project better be pretty awesome because like you're a senior engineer, and don't have it be freaking like what I'm trying to say here, like just like something you slapped together because you wanted to like show up for Spark or show up for Kafka. Like actually like put some time into it and make it high quality, then I wouldn't be too worried about it. But if it's just garbage, I would not worry about it at all. Lakshya, will this session be recorded? 100%. It's going to be recorded. It's on LinkedIn and on YouTube and on Facebook. Those are the 3 places I'm currently streaming this at. So yeah, welcome everyone. If y'all have any other kind of questions, I'm here for about another 20 minutes, right? Where is the sign up page for bootcamp? If you go to dataexpert.io, that's where you can see the curricula. You can see all sorts of things there. That's where you can buy. Dataexpert.io is where, or if you just, that's probably going to be the easiest way to find it. So yeah, it should be a good time. I'm really excited. We currently have 150 people who have signed up, and I'm hoping to get another 100. So I'm hoping to do like about 250 for this next cohort, which I think will be really powerful, right? How exactly do you debug PySpark pipelines? Depends. Honestly, depends. Like it depends on what the problem is, right? Like the problem might be a data quality thing. It might be a memory thing. It might be a dependency thing. Like, so let's go over each one real quick. So let's say you're getting an out of memory problem. This is very common. There's going to be a couple different strategies there. One is to turn on adaptive execution and that's going to solve a lot of your problems. If not, another strategy is to just bump up your memory. Like spark.executor.memory can be bumped up. That can be an easy fix. If it's a dependency problem, that can be more complicated. And usually if it's a dependency problem, the job just won't run at all. And like, it just doesn't run. And Python dependencies is like such a mess. It's such a terrible mess. So like I would, caution you with that stuff. But definitely in that case, you need to have a little bit more pip kung fu to understand like why that library isn't compiling. And then I would say the last one is going to be like you just have like a weird syntax problem in your job. And that's going to be another thing that you can look into just in terms of like, okay, am I calling my functions in the right places? Like there's not like, I don't know. Those are going to be the 3 main things that break with PySpark jobs. Okay, let's see here. Do DE need to be good at OOP abstractions, design patterns? Like, depends. Honestly, depends. Just depends. Like, if you're focused on analytics, no. If you're a data engineer, software engineer archetype, then yeah, 100%. That's going to be the big thing there. So like, it depends. Like I'm good at those things. And like, if you want to make 600K as a data engineer, yeah, you need to be good at those things. If you want to make 100K as a data engineer, you probably don't need to be good at those things. Interesting. Okay, let's go with this one. What was your main tech stack at Airbnb for data engineering projects? So Airflow as the scheduler, Spark as the execution engine. And then we used the thing called Wall for data quality. It's not open source. I was trying to get that open source before I left, but then I just left. But Wall is used. It's kind of like Great Expectations. If you've ever used Great Expectations, that's like a kind of equivalent. And then we used Druid for the visualization layer. And yeah, that's about it. It's the stack. Like, I guess, we used Iceberg for the storage. And so, yeah, Iceberg and S3, everything on Amazon. Okay, here we go. How likely is it to convert from business analyst to data engineer? I'm really committed, but I have no STEM background and only use Microsoft products. Please be brutally honest. It's great. I mean, it all depends on how focused you are and like whether or not you actually want to freaking, what I'm trying to say here. If you actually like are focused and dedicated, you can do it. You can definitely do it. I've seen so many people do that transition. Business analyst and data analyst are the same thing in my mind. They're very, 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 very similar. So like you're a data analyst and you want to be a data engineer, you know SQL, you already have a lot of the background. I mean, and so maybe learn some Python and you'll probably get there. This is a good one. Simon, thank you so much for this question. Are you aware of any connector to read write Iceberg with Python? There actually is a thing called PyIceberg that Brian Olson. If you talk with Brian Olson or Jason Reed about that, they freaking are literally working on that exact problem right now. Because I have that same problem right now where I'm like loading data into Iceberg and I'm like, why am I using Spark for this? I need to be using just like a script. And I know that like that stuff is coming along, and that's I'm hoping that we can get further along with that stuff as well, because that will be another critical thing that will be really good for the boot camp to be building stuff up, right? Okay, so Gray Wolf, great question. When and where is the boot camp you mentioned? It's remote. It's remote. If you go to dataexpert.io, dataexpert.io is going to be where you're going to want to go to check out that stuff. And promotion 15. If you use that code at checkout, that will get you 15% off. Another freaking leak code freaking question. Like everyone asks this question. So sure, focus on easy and medium and you'll probably be fine. That being said, I've gotten a lot of hate for that because some people get asked a hard question and then they're like, Zach, why did you tell me to focus on easy and medium? And so it's not necessarily the case that you will be asked an easy and medium question. It really depends on the interview, keeping in mind that like companies can ask you whatever the hell they want to ask you. So there's no rhyme or reason to it. But generally speaking, easy and medium ones are going to be, for me, that's like 80% of the time I get asked easy and medium, 20% of the time I get asked hard questions. So like to give you a perspective where like you might need to learn a little bit about dynamic programming and binary search and breadth first search and depth first search and all that shit. But like it's not as critical as knowing like stacks and queues and recursion and kind of that medium level kind of question for sure. So yeah, let's go to the next one. As someone who has struggled with unit testing Spark or testing for data integrity, what are the strategies one should look at? Learn how to build fake data, right? And generate fake CSV data. And so then you have input data. Like you can think of it as like you're mocking out the input data for the pipeline, or you mock out the tables. And then you're like, okay, if the table has this input, we should expect this output. And then you have to mock out the expected output as well. And if you do that, then you should be able to do things with like, if you've ever heard of Chispa, Chispa is really great. CHISPA, Chispa. That's what I teach Chispa in my boot camp to do the unit testing Spark, right? And we do more like end-to-end testing where we actually test the whole thing end-to-end with Spark unit testing. You can do unit testing as well. Like if you were like working with like UDFs and stuff like that, I generally try to steer clear of UDFs as much as I can and just kind of focus on like the core functionality of the pipeline, because like you only really need UDFs when you have like some really intense like custom integration stuff, right? So here's a good one. I'm from iOS development and I'm planning to switch my stack to data engineering as mobile engineering role is dying nowadays. What's your thoughts about it? Prepare to be making less money. I don't know. Like my perspective is that like I did the same switch back in 2014, and this was back in the mobile development heyday, is that I was making like 150, not 150, like 125K as an Android contractor. And then I switched to data engineering and I made like 80K. So I actually saw a pretty steep drop off when I switched from mobile to data engineering. So if you're okay with that, that's probably going to be the main thing that will happen. But there's a good chance if you know mobile development, you might be able to make a transition there where like you're like a mobile focused data engineering person, right? Because a lot of like mobile logging is complicated because there's all those different versions and all those different things that are going to be in there, right? So yeah, okay. What's this one from Daniel's great. What is the ratio between theoretical concepts and hands-on work in the boot camp? So every day has a hands-on lab. Every day we cover querying and we cover lab work every single day. And that's a big part of it. So it's over 50% hands-on. It's probably like 30% theoretical, 70% hands-on. That's like my perspective on it. That's like, I really, because I'm a firm believer that if I just tell you things, you're not going to remember it. You have to like actually write the code yourself. I'm a very tactile learner in that way, where it's like, I know that like engineering is learned by doing, not by listening. That's going to be the big one, right? So let's go with this guy here. How often data engineering people work from home in the big techs that you work for? I mean, It depends. I did not work from home very much at all at Facebook and Netflix. I didn't really work at all. And then at Airbnb, I only worked from home. Part of that is like COVID, right? A part of it is like when things change. So like I don't have a very strong perspective on that. I know that's kind of still the same. Facebook and Netflix are still like pretty much return to office. Airbnb is still very much like remote first. So it really just depends on the company. Okay. This is a great question. Is LeetCode the best way to familiarize yourself with the data engineering space? Definitely not. Definitely not. That's like, it's probably one of the worst ways to familiarize yourself with the data engineering space. There's nothing in LeetCode that's going to help you like learn how to be a better data engineer. So let's see here. Oh, this is a good one. What do you think is the best open source data visualization tool to present your portfolio, project portfolio, something that can be hosted using EC2 server? I mean, like, if you want to go super fancy like that, sure. I mean, like, I'm more of a perspective of like using high charts. If you're good at JavaScript has a high charts library that is really freaking good. D3 is also really, really good, but you have to know JavaScript for those things. If you don't want to learn JavaScript, then maybe like use like preset or superset, preset, or freaking like Streamlit or something like that. Those are probably going to be your best options. There's a bunch of choices there for sure. I mean, I also think that like building out the viz in Tableau. So it's like you have the viz in Tableau, and then you do the pipeline in GitHub. And then you just use and then Tableau is just like that final layer that shows off the project. That can also be a very powerful way to go, because a lot of data engineering roles, if we're being honest, like setting up, your own visualization on Amazon is not required in like any roles at all, right? Here's a good one. How would you talk about the bootcamp experience when applying for jobs? Well, there's a project you're going to do a capstone project for the whole 6 weeks. So at the end of it, you're going to have a really nice portfolio project that you can show off. And you can also talk about the different things that you learned. And if you get certified, you get matched with a mentor, and then that mentor will teach you and show you the ways of different things. And that can be another great way to get into roles, is like they can kind of help guide you and learn more about it. Okay, let's do this one. Thoughts on OBT over dimensional modeling in the future? Will OBT be able to handle SCD and historical data? OBT already does handle that stuff. It really does. Like, I mean, honestly, if you think about it this way, OBT, like, imagine like, okay, say you have a column that's slowly changing. Say like my device operating system is slowly changing. And what you can do is, instead of having that be a data, like a separate table, a separate table that you join with, what you can do is that can just be a struct column. It's an array of struct. So that struct it has start date, end date, value. And then it's just like you suck the SCD into the OBT, and it's just an array of struct column. So yeah, it can already do that. Definitely already handles all of those cases. I mean, the problem with that mostly is that you're going to need to use array functions to figure out what the right value is for your aggregation, because a lot of times like exploding that out is probably not going to be the way to go. So it depends though. It honestly depends on what you're trying to do, right? It's a good one. What do you think about the intersection between data engineering and machine learning? Is MLOps more data engineering position? I think so. I mean, because like if you think about it this way, the intersection of ML and data engineering really comes in at this place called feature engineering, where you need to build like a feature store and really monitor the health of your inputs to the machine learning model. That's going to be, but there's a couple different points where like it goes from data engineering to ML ops. Generally speaking, providing high quality features is still data engineering. But then if you're testing the outputs, like so the machine learning model will then send data back, and it will make an inference based on the data. And then you can see how high quality that is. And monitoring the quality of the inferences of the model, that's generally in the ML ops space at that point. Because then you can model things like, you can look at things like model drift, and you can look at to see if the model is getting worse over time. There's all sorts of things like that I think can happen. But like, yeah, ML ops and data engineering are very close. And I think that people who, if they can do end to end there, where they can like generate high quality features for machine learning, allow the machine learning model to train, then look at allow machine learning model to train, and then output predictions. And then those predictions are evaluated as high quality or not. And then they're fed back into the model to create this thing called a closed loop, where the model gets better over time as you get more and more evaluations. That is really powerful. Closed loop machine learning systems are really, really good and really powerful. That was a big thing I did at Netflix. And so definitely you want to do both, right? This is a good one. Daniel says, why does Spark have more or less monopoly in DE? It doesn't. This is a lie. It doesn't. So it's good. Is knowing graph database useful for data engineering, and have you use it? Yeah, I mean, I worked at Netflix for 2 years building a graph database. I did a bunch of different POCs with Neptune, with Janus Graph, with Neo4j, all the different kind of graph database vendors. Is it useful for data engineering? For almost all roles, the answer to that question is no, because almost all roles don't use graph databases. 90% do not use graph databases. So there is some fringe roles where it's useful, but it's not the core of data engineering. It's really one of those things that's right on the edge between data engineering and data platform. So you want to be mindful of that, depending on what role you're trying to get into. Okay. Trying to see here. What's your favorite tech stack in DE? The one that gets the job done? I don't know. That's my main perspective on it. It all depends on what you're trying to do. I personally love Spark and Airflow. I think Spark and Airflow are great because they just scale up so nicely. So you can really have a really powerful, really scalable system that way. But keeping in mind that 99% of businesses don't need the scale that Spark provides because they only have 1 million rows or 10 million rows or maybe 100 million rows, right? They don't have a ton of data. So in those cases, why use Spark? So it's not really about what your favorite tech stack is. It's about looking at the current business and what their needs are and fitting the technology for that business need, as opposed to being a fanboy about I love this tech stack or I love this tech stack, right? You want to be very aware and cognizant. And if you are freaking doing that, then that is going to be how you make a lot more money, because then that's when you're going to be making decisions that actually impact the business. And if you're making decisions about your data engineering that actually impact the business, that's when you're going to actually make more money. Okay, let's see here. Will we see strong push for alternative to Python for performance reasons? No, we won't. Because the problem here is Python can wrap high performance languages. And so they'll just do that. I don't know if y'all have ever worked with PySpark, because PySpark is actually not Python, right? It's Python that calls Scala libraries. And Scala is a high performance language, but Python is a terrible language in terms of performance. But PySpark has the performance characteristics of Scala, but you can write it in Python. And that is the future. And that is what it is right now. And that's the future. I don't know if you've ever worked with Polars. Polars is the same way, where Polars is just Python that calls Rust. And that's going to be the way to go. And that's going to be the best way to kind of build it out. This is a great question. We're almost done here. What's the best way to maintain data quality? You need to have data quality checks on all your pipelines. Make sure to use Write, Audit, Publish. So Write, Audit, Publish is going to be one of the most powerful tools you have to guarantee that your data set is high quality. That's going to be really good. Other things about it, you need to solve it at the source. This is one of the things that data engineers get wrong a lot of the time, is they think that they have to solve it in the pipeline, but you don't solve data quality at the pipeline. You solve it at the source. So that might mean you need to collaborate with people on logging, or collaborate with third-party API vendors, or collaborate with different people to solve the source data problem. Because then if you solve it at the source, then you don't have to have this massive, nasty case when statement in your pipeline that freaking maps things over and is hard to maintain. Right. So you see here, this is a good one. Where do you run your Spark code? It depends. For my company, we're going to use Spark EMR for my startup, and for the bootcamp, we're going to be using Spark EMR. But then at Airbnb, they used Spark EMR. At Netflix, they used Spark EMR. At Facebook, they used this kind of weird hybrid thing, because they're in their own cloud, right? They aren't in EMR, so they can't use EMR because they don't they're not on Amazon. So like, yeah, they use like their own thing. So see here. Hi, Zach. I worked as a SWE developing APIs for a year and currently working as a DE in my current firm. What would be an ideal role if I want to work on the intersection of both in the future? Just data platform role. A data platform role could be really powerful. Definitely look into that. I was obsessed with data platform. I feel like I really relate to your story here. So yeah. Yeah, Godwin, if you go to dataexpert.io, that's where you can check it out. It's about $2,000. But if you use the code promotion15 at checkout, you can get 15% off, and it's like 1,600, something like that. It's really reasonably priced. And so I'm excited to get y'all in there and to check stuff out. But anyways, thank you so much, everyone, for making it in today and asking very great questions. I hope y'all have a fantastic time here and this Sunday. So